Today I'm going to talk to you about card number 20, which is the Judgment card in the Tarot Major Arcana. So in some decks it's called Eon, which we'll discuss in a moment as well. And it's very apt that we talk about this card at the present time. It's numbered 20. We stand on the cusp of the year 2000. It has particular relevance for humanity today. We enter into a new astrological age at any time now. We don't know exactly when it is because of the precession of the... No. Who's an astrologer? Jackie? Precession of the equinoxes, that's right. So that's why we've been talking about this new age of Aquarius for the last 20, 30 years. We're not sure when it was. A lot of people say it happened on Wednesday night. It's happening. So we stand on this momentous time for humanity. And this is number 20. It's 2 times 10. The number 10 on the Tarot Major Arcana is the Wheel of Fortune. Here again we have this hint that this is 2 times a cycle. Or, if we like, this is a double cycle in the Major Arcana. And when we think of the word judgment, it's quite difficult to remain neutral about that word. If you have a very strong Saturn in your astrological chart, the word judgment makes you feel pretty awful. And that makes me feel pretty awful. And I have an image here that I think depicts that pretty well. So this is not a tarot card as such. It's from a deck called Symbolon, and I use this very often to do 3 card spreads. Very, very potent deck. Have you read any? Yes. Okay. If you open the dictionary and you look up the word judgment, it defines the word as, number 1, sentence of a court of justice or a decision by judge. That's this picture. Number 2, misfortune viewed as a sign of divine displeasure. And we'll discuss that as well. I mean, that's not a great image either. Number 3, criticism, opinion, estimate. If we look at this image here, I think it's quite interesting. First of all, we have the symbol of the cross behind the judge. A lot of this idea of judgment comes from religion. And we have this poor woman standing in front of the bench, looking very put upon. So if we look at judgment as the finish of a trial where sentence is pronounced, or when there is a weighing up of options, we often have a sense of the biblical meaning of the word. Many religions in our world have eschatology as their basis. Now, eschatology is a really interesting word, and its definition is a doctrine of death, judgment, heaven, and hell. We're brought up in these teachings. So when there is teaching of death, judgment, heaven, and hell, it is very difficult for the average person to feel that they have free will. There's always a large sword hanging over us. Think of the threat of hellfire, damnation, eternal suffering. These are wonderful images to grow up with. In Christianity, we are taught that the world as we know it will end. The Messiah will come and will lead us all into salvation. All the prophecies speak of great destruction before the Messiah arrives. Today, towards the end of the century, you open up magazines, you look at the television, and we are bombarded on all sides by doomsayers. And it's as if we yearn for a cataclysm. It's like we have been indoctrinated to expect that there's going to be a tragedy before the world changes. So it'll be another cataclysm in the history of the world to cleanse our lives. Think of all the myths in all the cultures of the world of destruction, of punishment, and then of a new world order that arises out of the ashes. We can start with the Bible. The Bible's a great book of fairy stories with much deeper meaning underneath it all. And if we think of the Bible, think of Noah and the flood. The Bible teaches us that the world was pretty rotten. humankind was not behaving as it should. And God decided to wipe out all living creatures, except for one. He found one family that he felt could continue humankind. So he saved one pure family and 2 of every animal to start anew. Think of another myth. Think of the story of Atlantis. Even if that is a fairy story, it is a story of hubris and ego and the necessary destruction of this civilization. They were too big for their boots, all the books tell us. And as we come, I think in the last probably 20 years, we've seen a rise of religious fundamentalism. We've seen an increase of predictions of disaster. Psychics are coming out of the woodwork, literally. Nostradamus is quoted all the time. Edgar Cayce. All of these psychics, old and new, are predicting disaster. Maybe we feel that because of what we have been taught, we cannot hope for rebirth without punishment. So let's look at the world that we live in at the moment. Is it possible that this world may end? Look at the newspapers. Violence, shooting of children, famine, wars. The most immediate threat that we face towards the end of 1999 is the Y2K bug. I don't really know much about it, but I think that it is quite ridiculous that human beings are faced with annihilation, some societies say, because of machines. Where is the free will here? Apparently, if the computers crash, we human beings are going to find it very hard to stay alive. Just think about that. At the present time, the world is in a state of chaos. It's difficult to understand this. We are in peril through population explosion. It's going mad. Food crisis, not enough food in the world. We're killing off the crops. Resource scarcity. Ecological imbalance. Deforestation. Depletion of the ozone layer. The threat of nuclear war. Just the other day, India shot down a plane from Pakistan, or was it the other way around? These are 2 of the most volatile nuclear powers in the world. Unethical scientific and technological experimentations. Look at cloning. Look at what they're doing, trying to do with the food. Genetic manipulation. Germ warfare. Smallpox has been eradicated from the earth, but there are smallpox germs being kept in laboratories around the world. Why is this happening? It's like we have a death wish. Political anarchy. Climatic catastrophes. The world population is in danger of self-destruction, and yet we are living in our society in the greatest opulence the world has ever known. I'm not talking about Africa, I'm talking about here. We have the greatest opportunities ever to better ourselves. We have the greatest opportunities for education, for travel, for comfort, for long life. And we turn on the television and we pick up the newspapers and we see images of children being murdered. And we see images of children starving, and people living in slavery, and women being oppressed, and forests being cut down, and animals being tortured. And it makes me despair, and I'm sure it makes many of you despair too. And then the religious fundamentalists say, that's okay, the Messiah will come, and usually he, will save us. He will take on the guilt of the world, and he will cleanse us and take us to a new order. And that makes me despair even more. Because this is such a trap, this is such a loss of personal responsibility. If we wait for somebody else to do it for us, we will never get our act right. So whatever state the world is in, when we end this age and move into the next one, it will bring with it a necessary need for reevaluation. pretty depressing part. But all of us here are students of the esoteric, and by esoteric I mean the secrets. And some of us to a greater degree than others. But what we do know about the tarot is that the tarot teaches us that we make our own choices. So let's look at the tarot for another understanding of this process, and maybe we can get some deeper meanings from what is actually going to happen. So we'll get rid of this one and bury it. Some cards numbered 20 are called eon. The meaning of this word is an age of the universe, or an immeasurable period, or an eternity. And this card comes from the Heindel deck. Can you see it? It's not very good, is it? It's dark. It's probably one of the most evocative cards that I've ever seen. The central theme of the Heindel Tarot is the renewal of the earth spiritually and physically. He's very concerned with that. And most of these cards have a message of that behind them. And Heindel wanted to convey the message in this card of humanity on the edge of suicide, and the promise of a change that will bring renewal. So if you look at the bottom of the card, which is pretty dark down there, but it shows a clear landscape. It actually shows a river running through a green field, pretty empty, but it's pretty clear. You've got all the clouds at the top of the card. Look up there. The sense that the clouds are hiding an unknown future. The rivers run through canyons, a sign of old age. There are mountains in the distance, clear mountains. There's a fetus suspended in midair with its head down, waiting to be born. And on the one side, there's tongues of fire, and on the other side, there's rain. The fire rises into the sky, and the rain drops onto the earth. The soul descends into matter, then releases itself through its experiences and evolves to a greater understanding. This card shows a dark, fiery passage with a hope of a new life on the other side. If you can see at the top of the card, there's an eye looking out over everything. And this is the eye of the goddess, specifically of the earth, the mother, watching over everything and seeing what we are doing with this place that we live on. So in this card, he's speaking specifically of the destruction of the planet caused by humankind and the hope of new thinking. What happens when this planet is destroyed? When there are no more forests and there's no more ozone layer? I suppose the scientists, the rational thinkers can say, well, we'll get into a spaceship and we'll find another one and do it again there, won't we? So he's talking about maybe seeing this differently and fixing it up here. Traditional judgment card usually has an image like this. So this is Rider-Waite. That's probably the one that most of you know. And it shows an angel trumpeting, a call. And this symbolizes always a call from our higher self. The angel means a higher self. It's something calling us. And it's asking us to be reborn. These figures at the bottom of the card are rising out of their graves. A call to rise to a more meaningful existence. In basic interpretations, we say that the client has come to a crossroads in his or her life. That's how we're taught to read this card. And a decision is called for. And the decision has the opportunity to change his or her life. So this stage, when we get this card, requires us to come to terms with past experiences. It always requires a looking back on what has happened before, and then to move on. It's very like the Justice card in the deck, but much more final. This implies a very definite ending and new beginning. It requires total change. And here we come to another dictionary meaning of this word, which is critical faculty, discernment, good sense. We need all of those goes if we're going to make that change and do it properly. So the judgment required in this image is to look at the way we, as individuals, are part of the greater whole. Part of society, part of family, part of tribe, part of nation. And then we need to look at our history, our personal history, and make changes necessary for progress. Remember, this is always to arise from the graves, not to sink down. We will progress. Many interpreters of this card call this Archangel Gabriel, or in the Hebrew, his name would be pronounced Gavriel, because in the Christian teaching, Gabriel is the herald of the end of the world, I believe. Is that correct? Yes? There's another stream of thought from the Kabbalah that this is Michael or Michael. And the Archangel Michael in the Kabbalah is the hero of God. And he is the Archangel of our thought processes. So if we forget about Gabriel for the moment and say, let's just discuss the idea that this is Michael or Michael, and he's the archangel of our thoughts and our ideas, it implies that this process is a new way of thinking. In esoteric teaching, Michael or Michael is fire, and Gabriel is water. So if we say this is Michael, then this is a very fiery process, whatever this process is. The angel's blowing a trumpet to wake us up. A trumpet call is very stimulating. It is electrifying. You can't escape it. It calls for action. Again, if we look at the tarot, if we look at the archetypes of the major arcana, that started off with the fool, that innocent, young, usually depicted as a man, naive person who starts off on this journey through the 21 cards, through the archetypes of the major arcana. As the fool, he was pure, he was innocent, he had a lot of faith, he was ready to start on his journey. He didn't have a lot of baggage, he was very unburdened. He believed that he was close to God. He believes that God is looking over him. And as he travels through all these cards and learns something from each of them, he becomes possibly wiser and very probably more corrupt. And everything he has learned must be used to ready him for the next card in the major arcana of the world, the unity, and for the beginning of a new journey. Towards the end of the journey of the major arcana, this fool has made many changes. If we think of those cards, there's a big change in death. There's a big change in justice. There's a big change in the hanged man. But the essence of this card, number 20, is a final change. Nothing will ever be the same. When you make a choice to do with this process, nothing is ever the same. And we have the opportunity to be reborn. So with that last sentence, we have another meaning of this card. Again, that's from the symbol on deck. And this is an image of a phoenix. The phoenix arises from the ashes. The phoenix was a mythical bird that is a symbol of death and rebirth. It's a symbol of resurrection, and it's a symbol of immortality. Bless you. When the phoenix saw that it was near death, it built a nest out of resins and sweet-smelling barks, and it built the nest very close to the sun so that it could burst into flame, and it would be burnt alive, or it would hasten its death. And from the ashes, 3 days later, remember that 3 days, a new phoenix was born. And there's a sense of being born again. And that card is from Robin Wood Tarot. And that's the sense that I'd like to explore today. There is a young woman being born, being reinvented from the cauldron. And here again we have these symbols of birth and rebirth and of fire. So as we stand in this very auspicious time, end of 1999, the beginning of a new astrological age, we have to look back into history and see what we can learn from the past astrological ages that we know of. And remember, we think that the ages last approximately 2,200 years long. So if we look back to approximately 6,000 years ago, and we look at the evidence left, usually sculptures, sometimes writing, archaeological proof that we have is of humankind worshipping the mother. 6,000 years ago, we had societies that worshipped fertility. We have the statues, the figures of the fertile woman, the Venus statues. Very round, not anorexic, big breasts, big stomachs. This is the mother as a symbol of birth and of fertility of the earth. And from about 6,000 to 5,000 years ago, we have the oldest text that has ever been discovered, written on a tablet. Sumerian poems of the gods and the goddesses of Sumeria. And they talk of their ideas of the creation of the world. And one of those poems is the magnificently beautiful poem of Inanna, who was the goddess who ruled the world. And it's a story of how she died, or how she went into the underworld to meet her dark sister Ereshkigal, and how she died there and was stripped of all her possessions and all her finery and all her clothes, and she hung on a meat hook. She suffered again for 3 days and 3 nights, and eventually was resurrected. So from this society, 6,000 plus years ago, we have a story of a god form that died and was resurrected. And that's the age, we're talking now of the age of Taurus. And then about 2,000 years later, we moved into the age, the astrological age of Aries. And here we had different gods. I'm saying gods, not goddesses. Now we have the Old Testament, and we have the stories of Abraham and Moses, and the God of Abraham and Moses. And this was a very patriarchal God. And here we start seeing this idea of punishment. This is a male, angry, it's the age of Aries, remember, angry, warlike God. If you don't do what I say, I will punish you and your people. And the beliefs of this time gave rise to their own myths. At the same time as this Hebrew God was gaining prevalence, we have the myths of the Egyptian gods. It's the same time period. And in their pantheon, we have the story of Isis and Osiris. This is another story of a god who died, was dismembered, descended into the underworld, and then was put together or remembered by his mate Isis, and was reborn. So there again we've got death and resurrection. And then about 2,000 years later, we entered the age of Pisces. And there we have, it's our age, so that myth of death and resurrection is very present in our psyche. And there we have the story of Jesus, a new God who died and was reborn. How many days later? 3. Yep. And then we start with the Phoenix, 3 days later. So humanity entered this age of Pisces, and a new belief system rose of love and forgiveness. We've put away this warlike God. And also at the same time we have love and forgiveness, but we're also taught of eternal damnation and of salvation. So in all these histories and all these cultures, we have that repeating theme of death, rebirth, death, resurrection, death and being reborn again into something greater, hopefully. Heroes descend into the underworld. They endure extreme ordeals. They overcome obstacles. And they return to earth, usually with supernatural powers. They become gods. So now we stand towards the end of 1999, entering 2000, entering the age of Aquarius. We have to expect that we are on the cusp of a new consciousness and very probably new religious thought or a new religion. And a lot of you will say that's a great thing, but some of you might not think so. Now, this doesn't mean that as soon as we enter 1st of January 2000, the Catholic Church is going to be overthrown. This is a process of thinking. It's a process of consciousness. You're going to say hooray, Susie? Okay, so as a student and as a teacher of the Kabbalah, which is a system that many of these authors of the cards that we study today have studied, I believe that we gain a much deeper understanding of these cards if we put them on the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is a symbol of this teaching, and it's a map of creation, and it's a map of everything. And it has 22 paths. So the major arcana fit very easily on one of these 20. Each card fits on one of these 22 paths. The path that the card is placed on refers to a deeper energy or a deeper understanding of that card. So the Judgment card is placed on a path of the tree, which refers to the process undergone by the personality as it strives to become conscious. It's the 31st path, and we are taught in the Kabbalah that this process is perpetual or continuous. So this process of becoming conscious never ends. You don't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm conscious, and that's it. It's a never-ending cycle. We keep learning. We keep dying and become reborn. We keep becoming resurrected, hopefully. The cycle continues over and over again. When we add another layer to understanding this path on the tree, and therefore the card, much more becomes clearer. And to do that, we look at the Hebrew letter that's also put on this path. So therefore the Hebrew letter can give us an understanding of the Judgment card. The letter that goes on this path is the letter called Shin, S-H-I-N, and it looks like that. The Kabbalists believe that letters hold energies that have enormous power. Because if you remember in the Bible, it says that the world was created by the Word. So when these letters come together in certain combination or in words, they produce vibrations or energies. So this letter Shin is called a mother letter. There are 3 mother letters in the Hebrew alphabet, representing the 3 elements: air, water, and fire. And these elements are necessary for creation. This is the letter of, who can guess what this letter refers to? Fire. Yeah. Remember that image that I just took off the board? This is the mother letter of fire. Think of it as alchemical fire, or the energy needed for transformation. If you look at the shape of the letter, it's 3 arms stretching upwards, and it looks like there are tongues of flame on the top of the arms. Remember the Rider-Waite card? What do you see at the bottom? 3 figures stretching upwards. The arms are raised. It's echoed in this letter. The mountains are pointing upwards. In many of the older cards, you have flowers, you have branches, you have trees, again stretching towards the sky. The angel in the card is said to represent fire. So these upstretched arms end in tongues of flame. and then the card that's represented by the angel. The sound of the letter sh, that sounds like flame as well. When I'm teaching the Kabbalah, I always describe our souls to my students as flames held within our bodies. Some of us have very big flames that burn very, very brightly, and some of us have tiny little flames. Even a coal that is simmering, where you cannot even see a flame, has got very deep inside its black heart a spark. The Kabbalists teach that even the most evil human being has got a spark of a flame inside it. And the ability is for that flame to grow bigger. Hopefully, each time that soul comes back to earth, it's going to improve a little bit. Hopefully. So if we talk about this idea of a flame, what is a flame? What's the nature of a flame? What does a flame do? It always reaches where? Upwards. It always stretches towards something higher. It always stretches towards the summit. It can never escape from what it burns. It's stuck at the bottom there. Look at that very thick base. It's stretching upwards, but it's stuck. That which it burns, it changes and destroys. It transmutes it. We as human beings, this is in an ideal world, are forever striving to reach higher, whether it's in a mundane sense or in a spiritual sense. We always want more. So in a mundane sense, it would be more knowledge, or more status, or more money, or more something like that. On a spiritual sense, it's becoming brighter and brighter and closer to God, or learning more and more secrets. And as I said a moment ago, the flame can never escape from what it burns, and that what it burns, it changes and destroys. So as we undergo that process, we are changed, inevitably. And only through destruction can we be transformed. Or in the spiritual sense, only through destruction can we be resurrected. One of the meanings of this letter, or the word shin, is change. It's as easy as that. You want to study the major arcana, you look at the Hebrew letters. What does it mean? It means change. So the letter and this card and the path that is on holds the power of change. One of the most fundamental teachings in the Kabbalah is that God, whatever God is, doesn't matter, created the world so that God could behold God. In other words, we are God in miniature. We are created in the image of the divine. Our world is heaven in miniature. We've all heard the saying in esoteric teachings, as above, so below. Have you ever thought of what that means? It comes from this idea. This world that we live in is supposed to be heaven. We are supposed to be living in paradise. We are a microcosm of the macrocosm. But something happened during the process of creation that sets us apart from all other things that were created, human beings. And that was, we were given a special gift. And what was that? Free will. So it's like, in magic, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what gifts you ask for, because they can bring treasures and they can bring despair as well. So throughout history, humanity used their gift of free will, and what happened? We took this place that was supposed to be paradise and we ruined it, or in the process of ruining it. And we took our lives that were supposed to be modeled on lives of happiness, and we are busy ruining them, generally. So through the centuries of humanity, we've always ensured that we are very far away from what was originally intended. So, I don't know whether that's ignorance or stupidity or stubbornness, or I have no idea why. Again, if we look at this letter, in the Kabbalah we taught that the secret of this world, of this letter, is the secret of the world to come. So it heralds a new world, a new beginning. So instead of the Messiah coming and this being a person to move us out of this world and take us to the new world, maybe we can just resurrect ourselves, take on a little bit of personal responsibility. So if this heralds a new beginning or the opportunity to rise from the graves that we are stuck in, to hear the call of the angel or the divine, maybe then we can become more like the original as God intended it. God wanted to behold God. Again, if we look at the Bible, and as I said earlier that the Bible's a collection of fairy stories, what I mean is, don't take these stories too literally. They hold enormous truths, but they are not supposed to be read literally, which is what a lot of religious fundamentalists do. So literal translation of the Bible makes us think that when we tried to become conscious, we did wrong. Remember Adam and Eve? They were told, don't eat that tree, the tree of knowledge. They tried to become conscious, and they did wrong. And what happened to them? They were punished. And whose fault was it? Whose fault was it? Yeah, her fault. She tempted this poor helpless man. She made him eat the apple. Okay. So through using our free will and in trying to become more conscious, we ate of the forbidden fruit. And Carl Jung says that every step towards greater consciousness is a kind of Promethean guilt. Through knowledge, the gods are robbed of their fire. The man who has usurped the knowledge has raised himself above the human level of his age. Just to give you a bit of background on this, Prometheus is a Greek figure, a titan, who loved humankind. And he saw these poor people trying to scratch out an existence on the earth. They didn't have the secret of fire. And he stole fire from the gods and gave it to humankind. The gods were, of course, furious because it wasn't his to give. And they punished him by chaining him to a rock. And his liver was torn out every day for eternity by an eagle, and it regrew at night, and then it was kept being torn out ad infinitum, till eventually he was rescued by another hero or demigod. That's not part of the story. But it's the sense of Prometheus gave humanity something that the gods didn't want them to have. Every step towards greater consciousness is a kind of Promethean guilt. Okay? Those men given the secret of fire raised themselves above the human level of their age. They had a secret. They were much more powerful. They were able to light fires, to cook meals. That was the beginning of tribes. Humanity took a step upwards. They were reborn. It's sort of like a uniquely Australian thing we're led to believe, the tall poppy syndrome. You all know that? Tall poppy syndrome says it's most important that you stay with the herd. You don't raise your head above the others. You don't overextend yourself. You wait till everybody changes. Okay? That's the and they have us believe that that's the way it's supposed to be. This card says that we must change when it is our time. When it is our personal time. When all the signs are telling us that it's time to do something differently. Never mind what your partner says, or your colleague, or your family, or your society. What very often happens with this process is that the signs become very distressing or very loud. It's like we have this trumpet being blown very, very loudly in both ears at once. Initially, we usually try and ignore it. We ignore the call of the higher self. We're caught in those old attitudes. We want approval from the people around us. We want to stay the same as everybody else. And when that call becomes really, really loud, or as I like to say, when the angels kick you very, very hard in the head, you can't escape noticing it. So we take notice. We change course. We take a different road. We see our lives with new eyes. We see new opportunities. We approach situations with much more awareness. When this is happening in your life, it's very difficult to remain asleep because all the signs are telling you you have to change. Get off this road because it's going to end in a minute in a ditch. Take the other road. So again, to bring it back to where we are going in this century, when I was doing this talk, and I mean, when I was writing this talk, I became very, very depressed. Where's Anita? Next time you ask me to I'm talking on the fool. The devil would be a good one. Not the devil, I'm sick of it. So I became so depressed, I'm like, okay, forget it. And I did a spread about where humanity was, where we were heading, what's likely for us as we enter the year 2000. And I'd like to put on the board, and I'd like feedback, I'd like to discuss this. My word of honor, I promise, I did the spread without cheating. Word of honor. And I've done it in the form of the life cycle spread, which is one of Anne John's spreads, and it's a very good, quick spread, usually used with a major arcana. The first position is conscious, so what the world is conscious of. Second position is unconscious, what they're unaware of. Third is where we are heading. Fourth and fifth, called personality and environment. That's really what's going on around us. Okay? Can you see? This is the tarot cards are called the Witch's deck. There are two Witch's decks. This is a very unusual one, and I love them. First card here is called the Universe. It's card number 21, or the World card. Down here we have the Hanged Man. Up at the top we have the Hermit. In this deck it's called the Seeker. And he's a little bit different to other depictions of the Hermit in that he, or she, is looking up, shining the light up. And here we have the moon and the sun. Promise you I didn't cheat. Okay. So maybe we can discuss this spread as to where are we going? Where is humanity going? What is happening to the world as we enter the year 2000? So the first position as the world, conscious. Any ideas about that?
Indian cycle.
Indian cycle. Yeah? Anything else?
Because it's conscious, it's very important to realise that it's a conscious feeling that we are entering the very beginnings of a new cycle and finishing off the end of the previous one.
I thought that was fascinating. As you know, we are so aware that the general energy is that we are aware that something big is changing, huge. Okay, forget about all the prophecies and all that nonsense. That's nonsense. But we know that there's a sense of things are changing. Anything else? Okay, what about the unconscious being the Hanged Man? If we're conscious that we're going into a new cycle and that things are ending, the other side of the world is also that we probably are aware that we could make life a little bit better than it is. You know, the world says if we put our mind to it, we can have what we really want. Okay, what about the Hanged Man in unconscious?
Perhaps being in the unconscious, we're not sure what we're prepared to give up to face the new.
A certain amount of delay.
Delay?
We're not conscious of the spiritual potential either.
that the hangman implies?
Hangman, yeah, all of those things. Anything else?
Conscious sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
Holding on to the path that you get was there. Everything that passed.
I think that especially here, this has got a very interesting, you can look at it in a number of ways. First of all, remember if you hang in the hangman for too long, are you ever going to move?
No.
It'll become impossible, your limbs will be locked. So there's a sense, almost like a warning, don't wait too long. That's number one. Number two, hangman, one of the meanings is sacrifice. What will we have to sacrifice to move on? What will we have to give up? The other thing, he's upside down. So, it's a necessary reversal of perspective. So if we're unconscious of it, we're unaware that we're going to have to look at things a little bit differently, aren't we? And we're going to probably have to sacrifice something or things. And if we think about that list that I read out earlier about all these terrible things that are happening, we might have to sacrifice a little bit of affluence.
It's a catch-22, because the minute the unconscious is conscious, or you're conscious or the unconscious, it's no longer unconscious. The hangman is surrender and trust. So it's trusting the flow of spirituality in the universe, which is the global thinking of the planet, the world, and trusting that subconscious or higher self is there that we can glorify into the conscious.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that trusting process is the knowledge if we are soothsayers and we have seen the future, we're going to have to change our minds about some things. Susie?
Perhaps that all the talk that you're saying about looking up, that actually you don't look up, look inside and trust your own power to, so you've got to sacrifice what I would say in our modern world time to be with yourself, to listen to what the urge is within you, to know the signs of the universe, and the universe is trying to present to us all its problems and stuff to show us that the world's poxy and we've got to do something about it.
That's
Going
probably,
and listening to that.
that's probably the main thrust of my talk, the sense that we have to take personal responsibility.
Still about it.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, surrender. Yes, a different perspective. Yes, sacrifice. And yes, look inside.
I really don't know about the tarot, but I just can't help but feel that all the terrible things that happen are really a reflection of our resistance.
Very possible.
As in
The angels are kicking us really hard in the head, remember? And maybe we'll wake up. When the last tree is burnt in Indonesia, is it going to be too late to wake up then? I mean, I get goosebumples thinking. Goosebumples thinking. When the last bear is murdered in Korea, is it going to be too late? Okay. Yes. Right, so that's unconscious. Anything else about the hangman?
I get a feeling that coming from the earth up into spirit, if you look at the hangman there, the more we connect with the earth and the earth energies, perhaps we're also empowered to move into our spirituality.
And that's what Heindel said, remember?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Heindel, his whole thing is connect with the earth because it is our mother, and by that we connect with the divine. Yeah. So all of those things are correct.
Isn't that a bit like you're saying as lights on the way? So it's still on.
Remember, hangman, the only warning there is don't get paralyzed, don't get stuck, because then we have to become conscious of it first though. Okay, we're moving towards the seeker, or the hermit. What would that imply?
The wisdom within, seeking that, going on with whatever our particular personal and wider journey is,
Yeah.
to seek the wisdom within that.
That's following on with what Susie said. Yeah. What else? What other thing, what other meanings can the hermit have?
I think a caution to not to look for someone else to say,
Not to look to someone else to say.
but with this mentality, this universal unconscious that, it's all doom and gloom, where as Matthew was saying, it's life all time. And Brian, if you want to sink into doom and gloom, and you'll reach to somebody that appears like Hitler did,
Okay.
as someone you can follow. So it could also be, we like to read optimistically, but it could also be whoever presents themselves as this new religion perhaps, hey, yeah, that's the guy we follow.
I never thought of it like that, but certainly that could be one perspective. You know, who's holding up the light? I mean, the other perspective would be to say that there are people out there who are holding the light out and who can show us the way.
So be discerning about
Yeah.
who's lighting.
And the thing with the hermits, which I love, probably because of the Kabbalah, we're taught that the greater the person is, the more humble they should be. And the hermit's always a very humble looking figure. And all these cards, he hasn't got lots of robes on, he's pretty ordinary looking. So yeah, I acknowledge your viewpoints.
Because I normally look for really optimistic, but it could also be a caution, you know. But yes, it is to look inside you and make your own decisions rather than keep on looking out there for someone else to save you. Someone else will save the planet. Someone else will do all the work.
Yeah.
We'll all just sit here and, oh goody, they're making all the decisions. We've got to make some personal decisions rather than looking for that outside being to come along and wave a wand.
Yeah, and probably from our spiritual understanding, as Jenny says, what have we learned? Okay.
Not we.
Yeah. Okay. And as Buddha said, drop by drop is the pot filled, or whatever he said.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one. The other is there will be people out there. I mean, I believe that. I believe that there are people on the earth, ordinary people, who are holding out the light for us. And by their example, we can change our lives. And that's the other meaning. And the other one is that it has an essence of a spiritual teaching about it. The hermit does. And you know, if you combine it with the hanged man, maybe it means that as well. Maybe we're moving towards a period of much more divine consciousness. Okay? Now what about these two on either side of the world? The moon and the sun.
Also, the Burmans on a very mundane level, some like this plans, follow the sea, plant the seed, nurture something, harvest the seeds, and in that sense of where it works, but unless we do this plan, nurturing on that level,
Yeah.
it's a Virgo.
Yes, it is. It is a moon. I mean, it would be really interesting to think what happens if the Hierophant was there. Would be a totally different feeling about this, wouldn't it? But it's the hermit, it's the ordinary man.
I once read a proverb or something that said it's not important how much light we have, but how faithful we are to the light we possess.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else, Belinda?
Just his staff often makes me think of the Ace of Wands.
Energy, renewal,
New.
in a very quiet way. Yeah.
So it's the lights up there in that particular bit, lights up there, he's looking up there, his robe's blowing up there, but look where his staff is, or his Ace of Wands.
Because it's this deck also, we tend to look at the image and we'll say, okay, well, he's looking at God. You know, he's not looking so much down there. Okay. Now, what about these two, which I found fascinating, the moon and the sun? So if we say the moon is the personality, and we're going to run over these two. This is like the energy of the world. What's the moon?
Stuff's coming up. Unconscious, past.
A lot of stuff's been buried under that murky water, hasn't it? Yeah. What book?
Reflection, self-reflection, distortion.
Yes. And is it a quick process
No.
with the moon?
And it's a painful birth.
Well, it doesn't even know where it's going.
No.
It doesn't even know what's being born there. So it's pulling itself out of the slime, and it's a very rocky road, isn't it? That particular part's quite straight, but normally it's very windy. So it's like, okay, there's a lot of stuff under the surface of the earth or of humanity, and there's a lot of stuff bubbling away there. And is this going to be a quick process? Is the Messiah going to come on the 1st of January?
No.
So when, somebody writes in the Age or whatever that you've got to pack your suitcase because the spaceship is going to land on Tuesday the 15th of August, the year 2000, what do you say? Not likely.
is interesting, the position of the cards, because if you look at the moons and the universe as the Earth and the Sun, they've got a lunar eclipse.
Absolutely. Which
So
one blocks out which?
We just got to a solar eclipse. So that's waiting for the next lunar eclipse.
Oh,
Matthew.
this is
Position is
Nostradamus
everything.
Familora. Okay, well, whatever. It certainly implies an uncertainty. You know, I think there's the struggle there to be born. Remember, we started in the slime. We came out of the water, and it's been a long process. So this is like there's a struggle to be born, and it's just 2 steps forward, 1 step back. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubts. I would probably think that the psychic phenomena are going to increase hugely. There will be lots and lots of signs and omens around with that card there. Anything else?
That fits with this astrological Neptune moving into Aquarius that just happened
Lots of
a while ago,
dreams.
and
Yeah.
all that works in very well with that.
Yeah, lots of dreams, lots of prophecies, lots of hidden stuff. On the mundane sense, lots of nervous breakdowns, lots of neuroses. You're doing counselling, you'll make a lot of money. Okay.
I'm a little confident there.
Oh, yes,
Couldn't we say that because it's personality, is it, that more people, even if only one more person, or more people will get in contact more with the inner guides, the intuition, and take more notice of it than in the past, and it'll become part of their own spiritual development?
especially if we tie it to the hermit, the seeker, we could say yes. But again, it's not a direct path. There's lots of stops and starts. So I think there'll be a lot of people searching, but a lot of people get lost along the way too. Okay. And then what about the sun, the environment? Where, what is the possibility for us as we enter into the year 2000? I never thought of it that depressingly. I would have seen it as the most optimistic card there. I really would have. Because the sun is such a protective card. It's saying there's new life, but you're in a protected garden. There's no jungle around you. In that image, it's like the male and the female really getting together. A lot of people say the age of Aquarius will give rise to a new god who will be androgynous, man and woman, which is interesting. There we have the 2 sexes, maybe making friends for a change. Maybe coming to our own consciousness is becoming more balanced.
I wouldn't know
What?
I want to know why she wet herself.
Why she's in the water. Because she's a feminine. Feminine stands with her feet in the pool. Does anybody want to well, Lana says it's global warming. Anybody else want to have a different interpretation of it?
Awareness of the need to nurture the growth of the environment.
Does it look potential? It looks quite possible there, doesn't it? Can you imagine if I did this spread and we had the death card there? Think of the difference.
Also, the universe is expanding, so the sun is about expansion, so the universe itself is expanding.
Yes, integration. It's coming together, integration, yes. Susan?
It seems the kind of the universe is moving the individual, going to a state of pain and grace, moving into seeking within, and then following through intuitive signs and whatever to become the full you and become the sun.
That sounds wonderful, and that sounds like a biblical
Like
prophecy,
there's
doesn't
no
it?
place like home,
Yeah.
which is home inside you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that last card of the spread for me made me feel a little bit more optimistic. When I started writing this talk, I felt awful. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe we can do something about it. But it seems like there's an opportunity there. And it seems like from that spread, more and more people in the world are going to wake up. But we know the tarot cards, what do we have? Free will. So it's seems likely that they might, but you know, anything can happen in the meantime.
Some cards are very different energy from unconditional loving, and something that seems to come across to me in that position is more agreement between nations.
It's a much more,
You've got the two planets on each corner.
it's not so active, it's much more balanced. Yeah. So, peace on, maybe it's peace on earth. The brick wall in the sun card is usually meant to symbolize that you start off on a journey protected. So, you know, the wall's keeping out the marauders and the wild animals and the thorns and everything.
Or it could be that we wipe ourselves out and then we check it all this.
Back to our
Maybe it does. You know, we always know with hindsight. Maybe he'll be right.
So you've got two people there holding hands, and then you've got this in blocks behind.
And in that sense, building peace. So if we look at that being peace, in connection with the moon card, it's saying this is a difficult process because there's so many unresolved things that have to come up first. You know, it's almost like, okay, humanity decides to make peace. And with the moon card, there's so much that's been buried there for centuries, and that has to be sorted out first before we go into the sun card. So I actually think this is a very optimistic spread, and I hope that God's listening. Questions about this? Or does anybody want to say anything? No? Okay. So just to finish off this talk, I have really two quotes. And the first one again is from Jung. And he says that only that which can destroy itself is truly alive. So only if and when we as individuals change, and then as part of humanity, we then change the consciousness of the world. And we continuously, remember the path is about continuous or perpetual change. We continuously destroy ourselves and we continuously reinvent ourselves. Will we live as it was originally intended when God wanted to behold God? So it's only as part of this process that we will have any hope of attaining the state of being truly alive, as Jung says. The state of attaining paradise on earth, as we were meant to have. And that gives you, again, an image of the hangman. If we're stubborn and we hang there and we don't do what we're supposed to do, we'll never move out of that being unconscious state. Okay, so now, I'm laughing because when I first wrote this paragraph it was completely different. So now as we stand, teetering on the threshold of a new millennium, blindfolded and blinkered, stupid and unconscious. And then I changed it. Or awake and aware and stretching upwards. Maybe we can make the choice to tear off the blindfold, to reach up our arms to our angel and to fly. And to end it all, I have a quote from Apollinaire, which you all know. Come to the edge, he said. They said, we are afraid. Come to the edge, he said. They came. He pushed them and they flew. Thank you.
Before I ask the questions, does anybody have any questions? I'm sure that you'll be available before. I'd like to thank Evelynne very much for taking the time and trouble and effort to go on this personal journey to explain the card that we picked for our theme.
It sounded cool.
I feel like I understand cosmology now. Thank you very much.